Hello everybody, my name is Dusty and welcome to my channel. Two things before we begin. First, my hair is not greasy, it's wet because it's snowing outside. And secondly, this video is going to be pretty biased because I am against live feeding wholeheartedly. So if you don't want to hear me talk about why live feeding can be potentially dangerous, then this is your cue to leave. But I do want to make it clear, I want everybody to stay and watch this video because maybe you'll gain some insight on why I am opposed to live feeding and why other people are opposed to live feeding. So if you guys are subscribed to King of DIY, you might have seen he uploaded 2 videos in a row, which is really unlike him, but there was a reason why. He uploaded the first video kind of talking about how he got one of his fish, his new lionfish, off of live feeding, and the second video was kind of discussing why he no longer live feeds. And he said that he felt it was his responsibility to kind of talk about why he's not live feeding because he doesn't think people necessarily got the right reasons from it.
However, I elaborated on a few other factors of feeding live foods, and I think some people misunderstood me. Not necessarily the people that were against what I was saying, they were an extreme minority, but it was more so like the people that supported my ideas. They were supporting it for the wrong ideas and taking things out of context, sort of. And I feel as though I can just elaborate today.
Which is all fair, and you know what? People are allowed to have their own opinions, and I take King of DIYs or Joey's seriously, so I think it was important to listen to his side. But this is kind of my reasoning why I don't like live feeding. To begin, I have 2 types of animals in my care that could potentially be live fed, my African clawed frogs and my axolotls, but I refuse to outright. One of the kinds of fish that are more often used as live feeders are cheap goldfish because they are cheap. They're relatively inexpensive, right around 15 cents a fish, whereas guppies, at least feeder guppies, are a little bit more expensive than that. The problem is these fish are so cheaply produced that they're not cared for. Really not cared for. As Joey put it, they're just
Shell of a fish.
This means that they're susceptible to diseases, they're susceptible to all sorts of different kinds of things, so it's really important that you quarantine them.
We're going to get them as many to you as possible, with as many in a bag, etc. And they're raising them up incredibly fast, so you will essentially get a fish that has a weakened immune system.
And a lot of people who live feed don't quarantine their fish. They go to the store, pick them up, bring them back, feed them, and they're done. And that's pretty much it. And the issue with that is whatever is in or on that fish that you are live feeding is now going to be in and on your fish. I kind of talked about this topic a while back, like really far back in one of my videos about why you shouldn't flush your dead fish. And the idea is that once that fish is in your water and a bigger fish comes along and eats it, whatever is in that fish or hurting that fish or killing that fish essentially is going to be in your fish, doing the same thing to this fish. Additionally, those fish are so cheaply made that a lot of the times they don't even have the necessary nutrients that these fish that we have in our aquariums need.
For example, goldfish contain a high amount of thiaminase. Thiaminase is an enzyme that inhibits thiamine from metabolizing proteins and fats. Thiamine is essentially vitamin B1. Feeding goldfish, what that will mean if we circle back is we're going to end up with a fish, your main fish, that's going to be fat, unhealthy, and has a shortened lifespan, including a host of other medical issues, including nervous system problems, clamped fins. We'll have a fish that goes through feeding cessation, which essentially means the fish stops eating.
I feed pellet foods to all of my fish because those are better than flakes and live food because they are jam-packed full of all the proper vitamins and minerals that your fish needs to properly grow. And you know, the King of DIY or Joey went over a lot of these things that I'm talking about, so I really suggest you go and watch his video as well. One of the points that King of DIY or Joey brings up is that unless you're going to raise your own feeder fish, all of the fish you are going to buy have to come from a store, which means you don't know how they were raised or where they're coming from or what they're sick with. Some people say, oh, you know, I raise my own, and that's great, fantastic. But what happens if that tank shuts down? What happens if something happens to that tank and it crashes and it kills all your feeder fish? Now you have to go to a pet store and trust that that store is not going to kill your fish.
Some others raise their fish, which I commend you for. Go for it. I think that's a great idea. I also talked about the idea that I don't raise feeder fish because I don't have the space, the time, or the resources to kind of dedicate to that. Plus, I should have said, What if that tank crashes? Now I've got a fish that only eats live foods and I have no fish to feed it anymore. What if that fish gets infected and needs to be medicated? What if, power goes out and I lose the whole tank? A number of things could cause a problem to happen, and those problems rarely do happen, but what if it does? Then what? We go back to the fish store, hopefully they've got some feeder fish, we can't properly quarantine them for 4 to 6 weeks, and we've got to start dropping them in the tank. It's just a bad idea in general, in my opinion.
And that is pretty much the idea that Joey laid out as well. A lot of this video is coming from that, because I think he laid down really solid evidence on why he shouldn't live feed your fish, and he had said that a large portion of the hobby does feed live fish, and we are a very small section of people that are really adamantly opposed to feeding live fish.
A lot of people said, hey, I've been feeding feeder fish for years. You are the minority, the extreme minority.
I said in the Jake Paul animal cruelty video that if you are bringing an animal into your home, it is your responsibility to provide the best possible care for your animals, and that means not feeding them live fish because of the potential hazardous, things that could get introduced into your tank. But I would love to know your opinion on this. You can leave a comment down below. Tell me if you live feed and why. And I promise I won't debate you. I just want to know. I really, like I said, don't know anybody who live feeds, but I'm curious on to why you guys do. And if you don't live feed, tell me why you don't live feed down below. Maybe it's just you don't have a fish that you can live feed, or you're opposed to it like I am. So let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye, guys.
Not against feeding all live foods to every animal, or not feeding live, or not feeding previously live, or anything like that. I feed worms and crickets and different types of super worms and, brine shrimp and, a massive amount of live foods to the fish in my gallery, just not all the time, usually as treats or when I'm conditioning them for breeding, etc. I don't do it anymore, but for example, the discus is when I used to feed live blackworms to condition them to breed. I'm not against it at all. If that's what you want to do, go for it. Just try to do it safely is all I'm, trying to say here.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I'm going to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond blues.